20th, 2014 Economic Development Committee to order. The first item on the agenda, or the only item on the agenda, is the transfer station CDD landfill. The committee will hear an update from Representative Travis Noyes of CES on the transfer station CDD landfill.
You do want me to speak tonight?
I do.
Okay.
I do. John
couldn't make it.
John couldn't make it. He had class tonight, so Travis is going to speak on his behalf. And John did say that he's in agreement with everything that Travis is going to do.
Oh, okay, great.
That's what he said.
Thank you. I'm going to hand out a quick few papers here. My apologies for not getting to you folks any sooner.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. For you. All right. Good evening, folks. Just wanted to give you an update here of where we've been since the last time we met with you guys. What we were able to accomplish since we talked was to get a better handle on the volume of material. I think we talked that there was a volume survey that was going to be had. So the remaining volume of the landfill is somewhere in the 13,000 to 15,000 cubic yard range.
So what was that, 13 what?
13,000
Yeah.
to 15,000, depending upon the configuration of how the closure would end up looking. So,
Okay.
so that ballpark, throwing around numbers of $20 to $40 a ton, you're talking $130,000 to $250,000 of potential additional revenue. What we've done is we met with city manager and we met with John and kind of went over somewhat of a game plan. And what I've given you here tonight for a packet, a couple items. Basically, I've given you a schedule. And I know we've talked a little bit about a design-build process or a design-build process. I kind of wanted to lay out a little schedule here for you so that you understood sort of the time frames within which each delivery method for closing the landfill would follow. That is, of course, if you decide you do absolutely want to move ahead with that process. The second bit of information is really a life cycle cost analysis. What we wanted to do is just briefly show you what it would be like if you continue to operate this landfill as you do now. Now, right now, as I understand it, you're not accepting any waste, but you have the potential ability to do that. The way the rules are set up, you have essentially a 30-year post-closure monitoring requirement. So what that means is once you close, you've got to continue for 30 years after that to monitor, and so you've got costs that you're bearing. So what our analysis looks at here is I've gone through 4 analyses, and I've summarized them on this page. Essentially, if you were to look at a 5-year life cycle or a 15-year life cycle, and what that is, those options there, those first 2 options, it's looking at essentially taking your landfill and filling it over a 15-year period and a 5-year period, not generating any revenue for that, but just doing that. And then it lays out what your costs would be in those future dollars. So if you look at the very bottom, you'll see a net cost per ton. You can see the longer that you allow that to remain without closing, the higher your costs are going to be per ton. If you notice the next 2 columns on the summary sheet, you have a tipping fee and potential DEP reimbursement and a closure and just a tipping fee, basically generating revenue for selling or for accepting waste. It gives you a rundown of what your potential costs, your net costs are. And if you compare $80 a ton and $126 a ton, they compare very favorably to running and operating a landfill for a period of time. So in talking with the city manager and talking with John, we felt that was good information to show you folks. Again, I don't really know where you all are in terms of where you want to head with this process. So we felt that was good information to share.
So the DEP reimbursement.
Yes.
What's that? That's that 950,000.
If you look in that summary sheet, that basically your total cost, your monitoring and construction would essentially be $950,000, and that's broken down in terms of we've estimated $400,000 for your closure costs,
Right.
and then you add to that the $450,000 over the next 30 years to do your post-closure monitoring. So there'd be groundwater sampling, reporting to the DEP, things of that nature. The revenue portion, if you look down on line 3 in that column, it says $430,000. That would be a 75% reimbursement of the $400,000 cost and the $130,000, which I've estimated on the low end on the tipping fee portion. It's more clearly seen in the fourth sheet in the summary for scenario 3. You can see how I got to that how I ran through that analysis.
On what, scenario 3?
Yes.
Because I just want, for me, it was, if we don't do this, if we don't do this now, follow through, we're not going to get the DEP money. So that's what I'm really focusing on, how much money that is.
Yes. The potential DEP portion would be 75% of the $400,000 that we've estimated.
Estimated.
Yeah, and then the balance here, so that would be $300,000, and then the $130,000 that is in here, I've based that on a tipping fee of $20 a ton. And I know we've talked recently about as high as $40 a ton. And John is going to be in the process, if you folks want to move ahead with this process, to be talking with folks and negotiating those rates to be able to find the best rate for you. I figured I'd give you what we consider to be a reasonable rate. Because we've talked about other items too, both with John and I think when we were here last time, about all-in costs. You know, if you're going to pay us, if you're going to get a certain rate for the waste, somebody may be actually coming and compacting and leaving your staff to do things for public works that are, their normal activities, and maybe having somebody come in and actually take care of that as well. So that would mean the tipping fee would be less.
Okay.
Typically.
But it still comes down to, if we do not follow through with this now, we will not get that DEP reimbursement.
That's the key, because the way the law is written, you have until the end of next year. So the example here is essentially to show you sort of your long-term costs, if you were to evaluate the 4 different scenarios. And it clearly shows that your best case scenario, really if you're in the position of wanting to get out of this business, is to really jump in now and try to take advantage of that. So with that being said, I've provided the schedule here, and the schedule is essentially a design build or a design bid build. And we've talked generally about these 2 formats. The design bid build is the standard delivery approach that you do roads and sewer systems and water systems and whatnot. The design build is somewhat of it can be an accelerated process. So what I've done is I've laid this out here, and the main advantage with the design build process in our scenario, if you look to the very bottom, you'll see that the construction period, it helps accelerate the construction period. So we'd be able to do the construction earlier, or you'd be able to do the construction earlier next year. Whereas the design bid build process, it takes longer to develop a design than it takes a period of time for contractors to bid the project. And then you also have to deal with the DEP through that process. On the design build end, we have the ability to work with the DEP from day one to get them involved with our designs. If you notice, there are 3 design meetings that we would typically have. We'd have DEP with us. We'd have them part of the team going over the design. So the likelihood of getting their approvals more timely to be able to proceed is higher. Given the limited time frame here, I don't want to say they're going to be the issue, but they're going to be one of the big hurdles that we'll have to get through, is working with the DEP, getting them to both buy into the plan and to also be able to accept our closure plan. So, with that said, there's 2 ways to go here. We're prepared to move ahead in whichever fashion the council would like to explore. I know, speaking with John has a lot of experience in the design build. We have personal experience with, one of your local contractors, Sargent, with a design build, as a design build team on similar projects. So we could deliver that method for you. There are also other ways in the design build where if you had procurement rules that required you to go through some kind of a bidding process, we would help you go through that as well. So there's a number of different ways to move ahead. I think it feels like I wish John was here because he could probably speak better than I could to it, but it feels like understanding the council's will to move ahead and appetite to move ahead with the project would be sort of, once we knew that, then we could really get the ball rolling.
Well, I think going around the table, I think like we did last time, that the council's, well, from what I could tell, is willing to move forward. We just need to know numbers and actually get the information. And I think, and everybody can jump in, of course, but it sounds like the design build, like you say, you've done this project with Sargents before, and it sounds like yourself and Bill and John are kind of on that track to kind of go that route from what I'm gathering.
Yes.
And it really looks like it's more of you're skipping the bidding phase, so that's a month right there that we're saving right there in time from what I can tell.
Are we required to put it out to bid?
That's my question.
Yeah,
The
and
procurement
it's
policy
only-
says on certain amounts, above certain amounts, you
Yeah,
can put them
you
out to bid.
have to put it to bid.
This would qualify for that.
And it's a 2-month.
So we'd have to put it out for bid for something like
I'm
this?
not saying you have to. I think the council can do what they want, but I'm saying the
The
policy says
policy
you
is that
should.
we do.
Right. So is that the policy on vehicles or on projects? I guess with projects, I'm thinking a project is different than buying a police car.
I probably would disagree with that. I'd want to review the policy first, but the other thing you need to look at is your funding source on the grants, what they require. And if there's any federal money involved, you do have to go out to bid, and you may not be able to do design build. You have to look at that, whether the grant allowed that.
So I take it you guys haven't looked at any of that yet?
No, we have actually on the grant side. We successfully just did this with Presque Isle, and Mr. Stumfeld's right. There is obviously with grant funds there are strings attached, and you want to make sure that you follow the rules. The key here in this position, it's a reimbursement program from the DEP, so it's a 75% reimbursement. We have in Presque Isle, what we did is we actually went through a bidding process to secure the contractor. And what we did was we made it a qualifications-based process. So we had the ability to, because you want a qualified contractor. You don't necessarily want the lowest bid. Maybe you do, but on something like this, you want somebody who's done a lot of these. So we set up a scoring matrix with criteria. And we worked with the city staff to develop that, and the council approved it, and we moved forward in that direction.
So basically, as long as we look at all that, we can figure
As
out.
long as you look at all that, the funding source matters. If the reimbursement is coming from the state, but if the source is federal funds, usually the procurement requirements are more exacting. The state can, make its own determination how you're allowed to procure if it's simply state money. But if it's pass-through funds from a federal source, you usually have more stringent requirements.
Okay. So in reality, from what I can tell, we probably got to get an official yes from the council, which would probably be the first meeting then 2 weeks from now. We can put it on the agenda to get an
Sure.
official okay, whether the council wants to just move forward or not. Gives everybody time from now till then to read everything. Once again, for me only, if we don't do it, we're not going to get reimbursed. So we're going to be on our own. So for me, it makes sense, but I think we just got to look this all through and have Eric make sure we're going down the right road. Is everybody okay with that? We'll just get it on the agenda, gives us time to think about it. Then on the meeting on Monday, on the 1st, December 1st, you guys can come
Sure.
and say, you'll check everything over with Eric, make sure we're good with miles, everything that this is the route we can do, we're okay, and you can get to go yay or nay from the council that night.
Yeah, that would be perfect. That's, it's 2 weeks out, and we're, it doesn't really deviate us from the schedule. The key obviously is just getting on schedule and moving ahead as fast as we can so that we can ensure that, we have that 3-month window of construction here in Maine.
Right.
So we want to make sure we hit that 3-month window.
So I think, looking at heads here, the way they're nodding, I think the council's in favor of, from what I can tell. We
Yep.
just got to get an official vote and make sure you, Eric, and Miles are on the same page with the funding and all that stuff, so we don't get ourselves going the wrong way.
Sounds good.
Am I right on that?
Yeah, I'm just concerned, I want to be sure that, I think that if we should put it out to bid, we should put it out to bid.
Right, yes.
And I wouldn't expect that we would ask for bids for not qualified people anyway. I
Right.
mean, we never, and we have but I want to make sure that that's, because that is our policy.
Right.
That over a certain amount.
I mean, so to me, you're kind of getting it right now, the majority that's here. So it looks like
Sure.
you're supposed to have a meeting, is it next Friday?
Well, that was, hopeful, anticipating, we can,
Have it, I mean.
we can maybe bump this out a week, so if your meeting's on the 1st, we could probably push it out a week.
People won't be working next week, it's Thanksgiving, half the week's gone.
No, I know, I realized that when I put that into the schedule, I realized,
luck. Good luck.
nobody's working on Sunday, too,
Oh, there you
so,
go.
I realized that when I was probably in Orno when I realized that.
Well, that would make sense.
That's all right.
I know, my wife makes me work on Sundays, around the house.
Any other questions for Travis from anybody? I think we're good. I think
I got
if,
some.
oh, AJ?
Travis, quick question. On the monitoring costs on scenarios 1, 2, and 3,
Yes,
down the bottom it says 11,000 per year.
yes.
Roughly costs will be required for 30 years. The monitoring numbers, like on scenario 1, 677,000.
Mm-hmm.
Is that factoring the fact that there's 5 more years plus the 30? Because for 11,000 a year for 30 years, that's 330,000.
Did you do that again? I just got on the page. What was it again?
Scenarios 1, 2, and 3.
Okay.
In the bottom notes, it says monitoring costs assume 11,000 per year, and costs will be required for 30 years per post-closure. So
we
we
have to-
monitor it for 30 years at 11,000, that's 330,000.
Well, this is taking into account 3% a year inflation, so it actually looks at inflationary costs.
Okay.
So I believe this one is 30, I'd have to go back and check the math on that, but I believe this is 30 plus 5. So
Well,
it'll
the
be
fact that each
35.
monitoring cost is different is because it depends on when we close it.
Exactly. So what we're trying to show you there is as time goes on, and the
longer
cost
we
of
leave it
things
open.
increase, the longer you leave it open, you have 30 years of post-closure monitoring. And what I did was I ran these two scenarios, a 5-year scenario and a 15-year scenario, just showing you, if you capped in 15 years, 30 years from now, things are going to be so much more expensive than they are today, and
Okay.
just trying to realize what that cost would be to you.
Because no matter what, we have to monitor it anyways, going
Yeah,
forward.
absolutely, yeah. You'll notice that even in scenarios 3 and 4, if you look at the detail, you'll notice that there are closure costs, and those are for 30 years, essentially starting, after 2015.
Right.
And those would, they'd roll up to 550 for the 30 years with the inflationary rate included.
Okay. Good, EJ?
Yep.
Okay. Travis, thank you very much, and we'll get you on the agenda for the,
We'll see you Monday.
yes.
First.
Yes, the first. A week from Monday, yes.
Happy Thanksgiving.
Thank you, too. Okay, nothing else on this committee, so I look for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
EJ, Stan, second discussion. All those in favor? None opposed. Okay, thank you. Next meeting is the Administrative Services Committee, Counselor Peterson.
Call the meeting of the Administrative Services Committee to order. Committee will continue its discussion on the proposal to adopt fireworks ordinance regulating the use of fireworks in Old Town.
So I called Bill on my way here, just to clarify, because I said, Bill, I thought we were going to have something handed to us tonight, because that's kind of what we talked about in the last meeting.
Yep.
And he said he had gone to talk to Don and Steve, I believe, or Steve. I thought he said Don and Steve and talked about, you had mentioned about footage and all this stuff, and it kind of sounded like one of you were going to talk about that tonight, Bill said.
I believe Steve is.
Steve is going to talk about that, about footage, how if we go the route of footage, it's really going to create of no for Marsh Island, no for the lake, really limiting it to really certain parts. So I know on Bill's behalf, he said, whatever we want to do, they'll do, but probably keeping it as simple as like Holden's for just the hours might be the way to go for now. But Steve, please.
We really weren't sure which way everyone here wanted to go, with it. So that was one of the suggestions, was the footage, and because the footage in French Island for one, but my area, your area, everything like that, that's really close together and everything like that. But I think that's totally up to you. The language that we gave you in the Holden one, there's like 60 or 70 of them on the website.
Right.
Because we send it in to the fire marshals, and they print them all off. And that was the nearest to what you originally discussed, was trying to limit the, I think I guess saying disrupt the neighborhood, mostly. We haven't had any instances yet, knock on wood, that, where there's fires because of that, or anything like that, because of proximity. So I don't know where you want to take that. I think a lot of it is that when the neighbor's right next door shooting them off, it becomes an issue. So, but and I thought the first thing we wanted to deal with was maybe the time frames and things like that.
Right,
So,
and I mentioned to Bill, I said, we've talked about this probably about 7, 8 times, the most item I think the council's ever talked about, so I kind of wanted to wrap it up tonight to kind of
Right.
send it away with at least that you could bring something, or Miles, somebody could bring something back to the council 2 weeks from now so we can vote on it. For me, my thing from day one has been the hours. That's been I like Holden's. I think, you have to adjust. I understand that 9 o'clock during the summer's not the same as 9 o'clock during the winter, so I understand that. I think there can be some adjustments there, but I think that the timing for me needs to be looked at. I don't think they need to be set off at 9 or 10 in the morning.
right.
I think it could be from noon to whatever time the majority thinks at night. And I think we've established a certain times with Riverfest and New Year's Eve and whatever else, 4th of July, that, we understand that would go the normal regulations as a state.
Right. We also spoke about the class day. That touches on the class 3 or 4, the high fire danger days.
Right.
That maybe we could do that
Right.
also,
Yeah.
something like that. I did show Council Peterson last week after the meeting, or last month after the meeting, when we discussed it again, how the aerial displays are really kind of illegal, and then yet they sell them. Okay? Well, they can sell them. It's a really quirk in the law. You can sell them, but you can't use them. And then when you go to define what an aerial display is, you might well be a scientist if you're going to figure out what the state means by what is an aerial display, and things like that. So basically, that was one of the concerns, but basically most bottle rockets and things like that, types of fireworks like that are illegal anyhow. So
Yeah, and for me anyways, at least if we can get something to you guys tonight so you can bring back to us. I mean, we got to hear from everybody. It almost sounds like everybody's kind of on board with setting some kind of hours, certain holidays and all that. The lot thing, once again, I thought it was a good idea from Councilor Peterson, but after hearing from Bill that when you guys talked that it's really going to, cramp pretty much the whole city. So I don't know if that's doable or not. But once again, we'll hear from everybody. But I'd like to at least establish tonight just to get this one put away so we can vote on it as a full council.
You say cramp the whole city, I guess I don't understand what you mean, because we haven't set a specific distance from one house to another.
You're right, and he had
If you set the distance at 50 feet, that takes care of the highly congested areas in town. But if the lots are 100 feet at Bushaw, that doesn't restrict them there if they set it off in the center to the left side of that lot, unless somebody's built real close to them on both sides.
And when you say and that's why I want to figure, because when I mentioned the bill, we talked about 50 feet, and he said that would, definitely Marsh Island, our area, depending. Is that, when we say that distance, is that from house to house, or is it, how do you figure out that distance? I guess, how are they figuring that out? Or you're saying that, or when we say 50 feet, someone can't set it off within 50 feet of your house?
50 feet of your property line or 50 feet of your house, your structure.
That's what I'm trying to distinguish, if it's your
Other
property
person's
line.
house or your own house.
Exactly, and then I don't know about the property line, because that's why I'm confused about the footage.
It's whatever you want to set it to. Right. But if we restrict them on French Island, is that a bad thing, or do we want to burn a house down over there?
No, I agree, but I think
I
it's.
mean, just because you set the hours doesn't mean you're okay, because
Right.
if you set them off up there on the island, the houses are 30 feet apart, the chances of something going bad are much greater than they are out to the lake where they're 100 feet apart.
Right.
Or 200 feet apart.
So it's almost like you say, we'd have to establish it, but it's almost like setting it off from the house to house, or the fireworks to the house.
It's however you want it. As Councilor Peterson just said, you can make it 50 feet or 30 feet or some other number from the property line. You can make it that distance from the house itself. So if the house is 20 feet from the property line, maybe you've got to be 30 feet back from that, but you're closer than 50 feet to the property line. You can have it apply to any structure, or you can allow people to set them off closer than that limit to their own structure. If you think about the hunting regulations in Maine, you can't hunt within 300 feet of a residence, but that's someone else's residence. You can actually hunt within 300 feet of your own. You don't need, it doesn't violate the law to do that. So you can really put those together, put that together. Whatever you think advances public safety is regulated requirement.
Well, that was the other thing that Bill had said to me. Just give me just a second, David, that for the police to enforce it, they got to go out there with a measuring tape to measure when it was actually set. I mean, when you start that distance, how do you know where it is by the time they get there? And,
Yeah, you may have to. It's just like any other ordinance violation. If there's a distance component, you've got, shoreline zone setbacks, you've got to go out there with a tape measure it, and see how far back it is. Same thing with these violations.
Dave?
Dave Russell, Code Officer. For enforcement purposes, I would urge you to go from structure to structure, because now we're going to be incorporating surveyors to go out and try and find pins, and
Right.
I just think there's so many areas here that there are no pins visible anywhere for property lines.
And I'm still saying, even if my neighbor did it, somebody's got to come and measure. Officer Hashey's going to have a tape measure to measure from the house next to me to my house to see if it's okay. So that's why it's a little cloudy for me on the distance.
Well, and if I may, I guess I would echo Dave's comment. He's right about that, and I'll take it one step further. As a lawyer, some of the most bitter disputes I've ever experienced are boundary line disputes, where people are arguing over where the boundary line is. And what better way to really pour salt on the wound than to set off fireworks on land that you say is yours, or
Right.
That's only 30 feet from the boundary line, or only 20 feet from the boundary line, but when the neighbor is contesting that measurement because he thinks it's his land, that's just an open invitation to really escalate those types of disputes.
I mean, Chief, Don, what do you think about this as far as property and all that?
I agree. It gets very. A lot of the complaints that we get are people arguing about their boundary, and this is my property, and he's got his vehicle parked on my. So it would be very difficult for us to try to enforce something from a boundary that is going to be in dispute. It would be easier for us to. I mean, if we have to go measure from somebody's house, at least the house we know
Right.
is a fixed object, and we can measure where we think the objects, where they put them off or whatever.
Right.
I mean, it's one of those things that somebody's going to set off a firework,
They
the neighbors are going
disappear.
to call, they're going to disappear, we're going to come and try to investigate it, and it's going to be it is a tough one to enforce. The repeat offenders, where they can actually say, this is what they're doing it. We almost have better luck, and Mike can probably help me out, is almost with going like the disorderly conduct issue, because that is, you're disturbing the neighbors, stop what you're doing. We've got a complaint, we're disturbing the neighbor. That one for us is almost easier to deal with than saying, you set off this fireworks 100 feet from this house. They're going to say, well, no, I wasn't really 100 feet, I was only 90 feet, or I was 110 feet, or I was 20 feet, or something like that. That's why the fireworks one is very difficult to enforce, and like I said, that's why a lot of times in town here, it's easier to go with a disorderly conduct where you're disturbing the peace of your neighbors.
But that you could still have the hours.
Oh, the
just
hours, yeah,
and
that's
then
fine.
still use
Yep.
the disorderly at that
Right.
point.
Yep. But all the restrictions you put in, we still have two issues. A lot of times people don't call.
Right.
And when we do go, the fireworks were set off 5 minutes ago, and
Right.
we're cruising the neighborhood trying to figure out who did it.
Right.
Yeah, but I mean, I'm not trying to discourage you from
No,
tightening
no,
up
I
the
know.
ordinance, but.
Any questions for Steve?
I think the first thing we need to do, I would hope that we kind of got to break it down in pieces. Do you want an ordinance at all to set the hours? And then how restrictive do you want to go? Do you know what I mean? Want to go further than that? Because I believe that if it is a structure issue, rather if the boundary line is such an issue, then a structure issue is not. Okay, I mean, they can say 50 feet, 70. It's a deterrent, okay, that people wouldn't do that. They would use the common sense. Right now, I think people feel that people aren't using common sense in the highly congested areas, Right. So it's just another tool in the toolbox that if you have it, if you are lucky enough to get there in time, and right off the bat, like for me to be 50 feet from a structure where I live, and a lot of us live, and also in French Island and the congested areas, pretty difficult to get 50 feet from a structure.
Right.
And have a clear area to set them off, so, that's what I feel.
Would it be easier to look at acreage? Like say .2 and less, you can't? Then you really don't know. Then it's less of how far you are, it's your total lot size. I don't know what the ratio is.
Right.
But are you still looking for pins when you say?
No, but you would think everybody knows what their
Lot size.
lot size is, or somebody, or Travis would.
Personally, I think it'd be easier to go from the structure, because even if I got .2 acres and I built on the left side of my lot, my neighbor's built on the right side of his lot,
You're right in the
and I'm
middle,
setting
yeah.
fireworks off in front of my house, and I catch his house on fire, then we've created an issue.
Right. Right.
And if we set it from a structure, at least we've set, and maybe you can set the distance, I don't know, what's a reasonable distance to touch those off from a structure, because primarily, I'm more interested in stopping a fire than I am worried about the fireworks. And if somebody knows that you can't set them off in that area, and it's a fire hazard, then that's another nail in your coffin for your liability if you do that, because the town has an ordinance against setting them off, and the police could easily point that out, that, we've got an ordinance against this, and if you set them off within 50 or 75 feet of that house, you've broken an ordinance, and you're much more easily to be sued.
That
Without
may,
arresting him or nothing, because you're committing a crime, and you've destroyed this guy's house.
that makes more sense to me,
Yeah.
attacking it that way, that it could set a fire, fire hazard. That makes more sense as far as the distance, attacking it that way.
Right.
Eric?
Yeah, I was going to make a very similar comment. Even if you have problems enforcing a distance limitation, most people are going to obey this ordinance because most people obey the city's ordinances. And just putting a distance in there informs them of what the fire chief thinks is a safe distance to conduct this activity.
Right.
So there will be people out there who say, oh, 50 feet, okay, I'll stay 50 feet away.
Say 50
It's just
feet
a
away from a
deterrent,
structure.
that's what I believe. And-
That
and
makes
we're-
more sense of it doing it that way.
We're not the only ones to struggle with this fireworks, just so you know, because now it's prevalent. 42 out of 50 states are allowing fireworks, okay? But Ohio has, they're going to the state, like we did a couple of years ago, to enact this ordinance, statewide allowance of fireworks. And their law right now is that you can purchase fireworks in Ohio. I might be wrong, it might be Illinois, it doesn't matter, one of the states in the Midwest, and but you have to transport it out of state within 48 hours of purchasing it. You can't use it in the state. That's their ordinance. That's how convoluted it can be. You know what I mean? So it's something to struggle with. But I know that we talked about the noise. The people that were here before, that came before you and spoke, were talking about the repeat offenders that do it over and over every night. And it's every night till 10, 11, right. And then they worry about the danger, scaring them, things like that. So I think it's worth trying something rather than nothing.
So you could put something into effect, if we can figure out the hours, you can bring something that you feel what's a safe distance, basically.
Yeah.
That could be right from the
There are
fire
ordinances
chief.
on the books right now that I can look to that have
Right.
that have a distance from structures, and there are also like that one that has hours,
Right.
kind of like both. And
So that takes care of the distance. What are people thinking about hours and
Definitely
days?
reduce
Same
hours.
thing we discussed.
So same thing, it's pretty much
It's in the holdings.
isn't it pretty much what's here, what's holding is? It was Sunday through Thursday, noon until 9 p.m., Friday and Saturday, go back to the state of Maine hours, 9 a.m. until 10 p.m.
I would rather change it to a distance after sunset. Because if you go at 9 in the evening, there's no way people are gonna set off fireworks, and you're not gonna be able to enforce it if it's in the middle of the summer. It doesn't get dark until after 9 there for about a month.
Right.
So I think if you set the ordinance at, say, an hour after sunset, that gives people an opportunity to do it without breaking the ordinance, because otherwise you're just asking them to break the ordinance. If I'm setting off fireworks down to camp, I'm not gonna set them off before dark.
Right.
And in the wintertime, when people are in school and the kids are in school and they have to get up in the morning, if you set it, then they gotta be done by, well, today they'd have to be done by 6 o'clock.
That's when this one says, winter hours, Sunday through Thursday, noon till 8 p.m., Friday and Saturday, back to 9 a.m. to 10 p.m. What do you guys think? I don't know if we just need to be clear about it as a time.
Well, winter hours, really, people don't even get out of work. until 5 or 6 o'clock, so,
But it's dark, though. It's dark at 5 or 6 o'clock, so
right.
that's why that's why they're saying till 8 PM during the week, because they
But
got
that's
plenty of
not-
time to get.
But that's not what he's saying.
No, right, Stan's
Right.
saying now, right. But that's why I think if we can make it clearer to do, if you did like an 8 PM during the winter,
Right.
because it's not too late.
What are you
Right.
doing in spring and fall?
Well, we got
It does have winter and summer hours, correct? It has.
That's what I'm
That's
looking,
what
It
that's
has
what we're
both.
looking
We
at.
can,
right
and we
now.
can, no, if you want me to draft something before then that addresses this, I just need to know what direction to take it, okay? So if you're saying, set some hours, reasonable hours for the different time periods of the year, I think we could easily come up with that. And then, and the structures, and you can take a look at it if you want to tweak it. I believe right now we're in a little bit of a lull period right now with fireworks until
Right.
at least Christmas and New Year's, and I don't know about any of you, but I haven't noticed any big outburst of fireworks on either one of those dates, and the fire danger is definitely lower, I would hope, especially in Buffalo.
That's right, I can't rake my lawn if
Yeah,
there's snow in January.
So we have time to craft an ordinance that would work for all, as long as it, was fair for everyone, and I think, if we work on this over what I consider the lull period for it, and we have time. It's not that, if we don't need to spend a whole lot of time on it, we just I'll bring it back if you'd like, or the combination of me and Chief O'Halloran and the city manager, crafting something that would maybe work for all of us. You take a look at it, if that suits your fancy, or if you'd like it tweaked, and we can work on it every couple of, every council meeting. So.
Well, I'm fine with that, because it definitely sounds like everybody's on board with doing something. Hours in the distance. I mean, that's what I'm gathering
Hours in
here, so I
distance,
think, let's do that.
Okay.
I just don't want to have 8 more meetings about it.
Well, we have to just have a couple, just so you have to look at it. So. But if we bring it in on the agenda on the council meeting nights on Thursday nights, just look at it
Right.
5-10 minutes,
Right. Yep.
and then.
I think that works. At least let's get us down the road anyways. Thank you, everyone. I appreciate it.
And you guys all realize that Shoreview's closed, right? So we're not
Right, that's
Right.
impending on them. Okay.
Okay, the next item, council, I'm sorry, this is Council Peterson, I'm sorry.
The committee will discuss adding a conflict of interest section to the council's rules and procedures. This was tabled at the October 16th meeting.
Council McLeod is not here tonight again, but I did have Miles contact Eric so he could talk about, at least
Yes.
pass something out and talk about what Bangor's is, just so it kind of gets in everybody's mind. And at some point, we're going to have everybody here and decide if we want to even do this. But
Yes,
at least we can have this.
Yeah, let me start by passing out Bangor's ordinance, and then I'll come back and make some comments.
Thank you. That's an awful big policy.
Thank you.
This is code of ethics, not necessarily just conflict.
Oh, okay.
This is an ordinance that I worked on extensively when I was city attorney down in Bangor a number of years ago. The version you have in front of you, I did a Google word search to find it, so this is the version that is on the MMA website as a resource items. There may be some changes that have occurred to the copy that you would find if you look at Bangor's Code of Ordinances. So if you find some discrepancies, that's the reason. Just by way of general background, Maine has a conflict of interest statute that applies to municipal officials, including you folks. It's Title 38, Section 2605. The financial provisions of that are very, very narrow. Basically, what the law says in regard to financial conflicts is that if you own 10% or more of a company that's doing business with a municipal entity, you can't vote on a contract award. That's really about the scope, the extent of it. You can own 9%, and the statute doesn't prohibit you from participating in the decision on a contract award. So it's very limited in its application. In addition, 2605 contains a provision that says that all public officials shall avoid the appearance of impropriety by disclosure or abstention. So you have a more general and more amorphous obligation under 2605. If you think there's something that might create an appearance of impropriety, you are to raise it and disclose it. And if it creates enough of an appearance, even if it's not a financial interest, you should abstain from that item. One of the many problems with the statute is it doesn't define a process as to who decides. It really places it on the municipal official to decide if there's a conflict or whether there's a disclosure required, and that can be very awkward. You might feel that it's something that merits disclosure, but that doesn't disqualify you. So you're in a position of disclosing something, but then voting, oh, I'm okay with voting that you're okay to participate in the decision. That's one of the issues that we address in this Bangor ordinance. This is more comprehensive than Old Town would probably want to adopt. Bangor has a standing board of ethics, for example, that actually hears questions that are referred to it on conflict issues. That board was involved in the rewriting of this ordinance and some other things while I was there. But just to walk, I can walk through it if you want me to, or I can just answer some questions about it.
I think like I said, Council McLeod's not here, but I know she had talked to me on the side, and Council Smart at one point. And I think the question was about, do we, going forward at some point, do we want to have a policy established that you can not be on the city council if you have a spouse or family member that's a city employee? I know for me, myself, my question was, do we have anything now that says whether a city employee can, whether they're retired or resign or terminated, is there a period of years before they could run for city council? And that was a question I had more so. So I think that's, the council just needs to discuss whether we even want to talk about this, or it doesn't mean anything, or we can establish a policy.
Yeah, there's a couple different questions here. If you're talking about eligibility to serve on the council, that's really a charter issue, and you need to be discussing a charter amendment. If you're talking about disqualifying someone for a limited period, there is at least one recent law court decision less than 2 years ago on that issue, and the law court tends to take a pretty narrow view of those disqualification provisions. The law court's position is that you have to have a really tangible reason to impose those limitations, and there's also the practice question of running for office versus serving in the office. I've encountered this a couple times under municipal charters. The most common example is you want to run for city council, but you have a spouse who's a teacher, and the charter in that municipality happens to prohibit, you still have a local school committee, so the charter happens to prohibit you from serving on the council while you have a spouse who's an employee or a teacher. Well, that's a removable disqualification. That shouldn't prevent you from running, and then you can, if you're elected, you can make the decision, or your spouse can make the decision whether to step down from that employment to enable you to actually take office. You can either leave that, be silent about that issue, or you can address that. Does it just disqualify you from holding the office, or does it disqualify you from even running for the office? So there's a number of aspects to the charter type question.
Like on Eric and Bangor, can someone run for city council if they have a spouse?
I think so. I'd have to have their charter in front of me. It's been a long time, so.
But that's like you say, that's a charter thing.
Yeah, that's a charter thing. That's not really an ethics thing. The ethics policy, 2605, does allow municipal officers to adopt an ethics policy, or you could do it as an ordinance, and that's separate from charter issues. Ethics really relate to, when you're disqualified from voting. In Bangor's case, there are annual financial disclosure requirements for city council members and some board members. There are definitions in here of family member, so you can impute a conflict based on a family member. If you're voting to give a contract to a company that hires your son, maybe you shouldn't vote on that, but you need to say that in a policy or an ordinance for that restriction to apply. If you look through this, you'll see a number of issues that are addressed. This also has some ethics and contracting provisions that relate to people outside the city, contractors doing business with the city. Things like basically offering bribes or gratuities or special benefits to public officials. So there's really a lot in here. It is fairly lengthy, but there is a lot in here, and it addresses a lot of issues. On the third page, there's a list of statutory standards that apply to public officials in Maine, and that's handy just to have it, so that if you're having trouble sleeping some night, you can look those up and see what they say.
Well, so I mean, I think what it comes down to, because you just helped me out by saying it's a charter, what really Council McLeod was questioning whether the council wanted to talk about or entertain of whether moving forward, that's more of a charter issue, is
Yep.
whether or not, okay. So that kind of, from what I can tell, that takes care of that, but at some point,
Yeah.
I mean, I guess it comes to this committee, but I really wanted her to be here so she could discuss it.
Now, for subordinate boards, this talks about prohibited appointments, when you can serve and when you can't serve on more than one board, or, those issues. There's case law around that, but it also helps to set it out in your own ordinance, just so the rules are clearer than, going and looking up a 50-year-old law court decision.
Right.
So.
So, I mean, I would assume that we probably want to wait till Council McLeod's here so we can let her bring it up, exactly her concerns, and then discuss. But this is,
Also give us a chance to digest this. We should get her a copy of this.
right.
This is kind of the deluxe version. If you want to go this way, you can probably pick and choose some of these provisions that make sense in Old Town. All of them will not.
Right.
I would not suggest simply adopting this verbatim. It's like I say, it's the deluxe version for a larger city that has more activities than Old Town does.
Right. Okay. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you. I'd entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Meeting adjourned.
Second.
How about a second?
Second. Okay, so we're going to move on to Finance Committee. I call to order the November 20th, 2014 Finance Committee meeting. So it's Councilor May, Smart, and myself. So the first item, library security system upgrade. Librarian Cindy Jennings has received 2 quotes for updating the security system at the library. The quote from Norse Incorporated is in the amount of $8,400, and the quote from North Star Protection LLC is in the amount of $6,119. The librarian is, looking for a recommendation to the full council to accept the low quote from North Star Protection to upgrade the library security system. Funds for this will come from the city facilities reserve account. The current balance in the account is $242,511. Cindy.
We have for some time had problems with our security system. We don't have enough motion detectors in the library, and we've had several instances recently where there's been some vandalism within the library. And so I talked with Bill about it, and he encouraged me to go ahead and get these 2 quotes.
And the money's there.
Does this include cameras or just?
Yes,
Okay.
it does. Because we have things that actually go on during the day, and it would be nice to be able to track
Now, is this
what's happening.
I know North Star very well. They do a lot of work at the university. I'm assuming this will be like, I really have not looked through the details, but this is probably going to be backed up for 30 days. Normally on the recorder, you probably have 30 days to watch it, then it erases.
We haven't really talked about, I think it may be more than that,
Is it?
actually, but
Okay.
there will be a server, and,
Definitely
we'll
ask them
have the
that
ability to access the cameras from different places.
Right.
Certainly behind the desk, it'll probably be available on my desktop, and maybe in the circulation manager's office, something like that.
Yeah, I would definitely find out that date so you know if you got to save something, then you can
Right.
save it.
Right.
So it looks like it's almost a $2,000 difference in price.
Mm-hmm.
Are these cameras motion activated, or do they run 24/7?
I think there are both options, and we didn't get into details, but the way they explained it, it wouldn't be scanning necessarily, and that it would be sort of motion detection operated, or it would initiate recording during that time. So when the library's closed, they're not recording. There's, I would suspect that they would be recording a good portion of the day because there's a lot of activity in certain areas, but then in other areas, they wouldn't be necessarily.
I guess I'd have the recommendation that they have the opportunity to record 24/7 and that you get them so that they are motion sensitive.
Mm-hmm.
Just because, we've had a couple incidents at school and we have cameras that run 24/7 where you can sit there and sift through that and sift through it and sift through it.
And find it,
But
yeah.
if it's motion sensitive, you cut the time by a third.
And that's what the way they described it, that it wouldn't be us having to reel through
To
a
loop
lot
through.
of inactivity, that it would jump from,
Right.
one instant to the next.
As soon as that means it's the motion then, so
Yeah.
it'll be still, and then all of a sudden, somebody walks 2 hours, it's just doing this, 2 hours later, someone walks through, bang, it comes.
Right.
So it sounds, I'm just trying to read it, but it sounds like that's what it is.
Mm-hmm.
The only thing that we've noticed here is that the motion sensitive is good and you can track through the information, but you have to have adequate lighting on at night.
Yes.
Or it won't pick up the motion.
Yeah, you need to have a light on where the camera is, basically.
Well, yeah, but in addition to that, there will be also motion sensors that will set the alarm off if there's any kind of movement at night.
Right.
So,
I know what you're saying, because for us, we have to have lights on over the camera so you can actually see.
Right.
Not through the whole building, but it's where
Right.
the cameras are, you're gonna wanna have a light on.
right. Well, I could certainly ask about that, too.
Yeah.
Does the light just turn on as soon as the motion?
No, our light switches allow 1/3 of the lights to be on downstairs.
Right.
I don't know if you have that option, but, because there's other things you may want to track. There may be other people in the building for other purposes that should be there, but
Right.
you never know what happens in the morning when you find something.
Exactly.
Well, and the system that we have right now, it's just you turn it on or you turn it off.
Right.
And they did talk about that, so that if the janitor was downstairs, she could still alarm a portion of the building and, be aware of
Right.
movement or something like that. So I think it's a much more sophisticated system. I don't know when the system that we have was originally put in. I don't know if it went in when they did the renovation or at the addition, which would be over 20 years ago.
Right.
So,
Any other questions for Cindy?
I'll make one comment. This says the current balance in the city's reserve account is $242,000. Typically, we spend out of the appropriation control, and that would be the building reserve account. And if we're running short on money, then we transfer money from the reserve account to the appropriation account. The appropriation account has $75,000 in it. We could spend out of that. If we find that we need more money, then we can allocate out of the reserve account.
So basically, we'll just get a recommendation tonight to send to the council, but when it comes time to do it, you'll just have the actual count number, not have it the right stuff.
Right, and that's the same way on the next one as
Okay.
well. Yeah.
All right, so if there's no other questions, can I get is there a motion to recommend to the full council to accept the low quote from North Star Protection to upgrade the library security system?
If we don't have to say it, I'll make that motion.
I try to make it easy for you.
Yeah.
Carol, is there a second?
Second.
Discussion? All those in favor? None opposed? Next item, Police Department cruiser computers. Police Chief Donald Howland has received 2 quotes to replace the computers in the police cruisers. The current computers that were obtained from a grant are now 8 years old and no longer meet the standards for use noted by their last audit by the Maine Department of Public Safety. One quote is from Transcore in the amount of $17,259.20, and the other one from Biz Compass in the amount of $16,375. Chief O'Halloran is looking for a recommendation to the full council to accept a low quote from Biz Compass to replace the cruiser computers. Funds will come from the Technical Equipment Reserve account. The current balance in that account is $225. Chief O'Halloran, Officer Hashi.
I brought Sergeant Hashi with me. He's the go-to man for cruiser equipment and IT stuff.
All right.
So if you tried to stump me, it'd be pretty easy. So, but I brought him as backup.
So, we got new cruisers. This is basically just to replace the computers that are, according to the
Yeah.
thing, are outdated.
Yeah, one of the things, we knew that they had pretty much outlived their lifespan. But we recently, within a couple of 3 months ago, we got audited by the state, which is pretty typical. They come every couple of years. And when they looked at our computers, they said that kind does not cut it anymore. We don't have the security features in it. And we've been having problems. We can't get parts for the old computers either. So luckily, the first time when we did it, we got them all on a grant, so.
And this is, I know Miles had called you today because I had a question about, this is something we don't need to throw on the agenda tonight. It can wait to 2 weeks out.
We're
too.
okay with 2 weeks, yeah.
So it's not, we're not going to put the old ones in, have to take them out, put the new ones in. It's not
No,
gonna
the
be
cars
double.
are in the process of being changed over right now, but 2 weeks won't hurt us that badly.
Okay.
So will the state still approve you guys to be legal, if you will?
They're
You know what I'm
coming.
trying to say?
No, I'll let,
I'm meeting with them on Wednesday. We have another audit on Wednesday. So it's possible that they say, you guys, you gotta shut those computers down. We're hoping that because, it's only gonna be a couple of weeks, we can convince them that, to give us a little bit more time, basically.
Yeah, I mean, we don't want to get shut down, so I mean, if this
Right.
is like even,
You don't know what the state's
We
gonna
don't
say.
know what they're gonna do.
yeah, we're hoping, I mean, the fact that we got to change them over anyway, that they would give us
right,
a
that they
2
know
week.
that you're
Right.
gonna replace
Because if
them.
they come Wednesday, they're still going to be in there. We can't take them out before then.
Right,
Yeah.
and you,
So-
right, and you haven't even ordered these things yet anyways.
No.
So even if we did push it, it's not going to matter anyways.
Right, it's still, you're looking at that kind of window, I think, pretty
Yeah,
much.
because it's not like if we order them tonight, you're not going to get them tomorrow.
That's right,
Right, it's just gonna be pushed out 2 more weeks from whatever that day is.
Right,
yeah.
okay. Any questions for,
I don't have a
Chief?
question, but I do have a comment. It would seem to me that like 2 or 3 years out from now, when we replace the cars, it'd be a smart thing to replace a couple computers with a couple of cars at the same time. And that way, they'd always be reasonably updated.
Make a note of that, Mike.
I will.
You're right, that is a good, yeah, and we try to do that with some of our other equipment. And what we have been hoping for over the years, was there was going to be another grant that would formulate itself, but that's not the case. And now we got basically at the end of the line, and they're saying, we got to do it now.
We gotta spend $16,000 now, and
Right,
appears
Yep.
that it might be easier to spend a couple thousand at a time.
right, and keep that up. Yeah, that's an
Years.
excellent
I mean,
point.
That'd be good for a couple, 3 years, but,
Right.
if you figure that, we change cars every
Yep.
what?
Yeah,
Three-
we
we're on a
replace
three-year cycle,
two.
basically?
We replace two every
We have
year, and we
6,
push them
right?
out, yeah.
So it's like a 3-year cycle, so
Right.
that if you waited
Yep.
3 years, the oldest one's gonna be 6 years when
Yep.
you,
Yep.
so you may only wanna wait 2 years.
Yeah,
right,
and
that's
start that
a good
cycle.
point. Yep.
very good point. Okay, any other questions for Chief or Sergeant Ashe?
I think you should ask him something difficult. He's here.
He covered the vehicle one, because I was gonna, add it on to the agenda tonight, but when I talked to Miles, he said it's not needed, so if you're okay, we'll just wait. It sounds like, even if once again, if we order them tonight, you're not gonna get them in time anyway. It's not like they're gonna deliver the computers the next 2 days.
They're doing the audit Wednesday.
Right,
The cars are in the process of being changed over now.
right.
So can they order them today? I mean, say tomorrow, or
Well,
no?
I mentioned that to Miles already. I asked if, I think you can see the consensus that the council's not gonna say no next, a week from this Monday. So, we can still wait and vote on it then, but you can see right now that the majority is okay with it. So you could still, in my own opinion, you could order them tomorrow,
Okay.
knowing that it's gonna get approved.
If
week
I
from this
might
Monday.
add this, I suspect, BizCompass is the company that the city has
Right.
to do it. And they will have to make those.
Right.
I mean, if 2 weeks from now, you say you had a change of heart and don't want to do that, we could say we don't want them. I suspect we're not going to get them in 2 weeks, even if we ordered them tomorrow. That's my suspicion, that they've got to formulate these computers.
They actually
Is
gotta
that-
make them?
Well, they're Panasonic computers, but they basically have to add certain things that we need to have them run on the computers. So they basically get them in, they make the modifications, and then they send them to, they ship them up to us, so.
All right, but at least if you ordered them tomorrow, it helped out the process
We could
a
start
little
the
faster,
process.
right?
That's right.
So, you can see right now, there's
Yeah.
5 of us here that I'm pretty sure it's gonna fly a week from Monday, so I would probably order them tomorrow. Okay?
Excellent.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Thanks for coming, sir.
Thank you.
Can I get a motion to recommend to the full council accept the low quote from Biz Compass in the amount of $16,375 to replace the cruiser computers?
So moved.
Lori, is there a second? Carol, discussion? All those in favor? None opposed? 3-0. Can I get a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
That's Carol, second.
Lori?
Lori. All discussion? All those in favor? None opposed. Okay, we're moving right along. Does anybody need a break? Are we good to keep going?
So-
All right then. I call the November 20th, 2014 Special Council meeting to order. Flag salute. Councilor May, please.
Pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Roll call.
Silent roll call has been taken. Quorum is present.
Okay, approval of the minutes of the November 3rd, 2014 regular council meeting and the November 5th, 2014 special council meeting. Can I get a motion to approve these minutes?
So moved.
Stan, is there a second?
Second.
Lori, discussion? All those in favor? None opposed. Petitions, communication, citizens' request. At this time, is there anyone from the audience that would like to discuss an item that is not on the agenda, other than Mr. Russell?
Bless you.
Okay, bless you. Okay, we'll move on to reports. Just for me, bless you. The only thing I had, I actually attended the big gig the other night. That was fantastic. There was at least 50 to 60 people there. I hadn't been to one for 3 years, so it was very interesting to watch. There were 3 presenters. I don't know if that's the word that they use, presenters, or is that what they call them?
I think so, yeah.
It was a very interesting one. A young man, college student, I believe, or maybe even high school, was doing dog toys that him and his grandfather's been doing since 9 years old. Another gentleman was doing shades, repairing shades. And the other gentleman was doing something with technology which was way above my head. But the gentleman with the shade operation, he got the grant.
Oh, he did?
He did. So that was very interesting. I'll wait for city councilors. I want you guys to talk about the community meeting that you guys had the other night. So that's all I have. Standing committees. Anybody have any committee meetings?
Just an update, we had the LLC meeting on Tuesday morning. Just a quick update, decided to spend a little money to update the website, economic development website. Had another discussion.
Who does the website? Is that Ron or is that Cindy?
No, the one that's external,
Oh, okay.
to keep that more current and user-friendly and up-to-date. We had a discussion on the mill, all public, what we know, so things are looking good in that direction. Was still some things up in the air with the trustee of the bankruptcy court, so we're kind of still in limbo. Talked a little bit more about the Jefferson Street School, and I think Ron's going to come next week to talk about where we are with that.
Yeah, he mentioned about doing coming to talk to the council, to kind of update us where they're at with
Yep.
that.
And I think that's it.
Okay, any other councilors?
Oh, you want us to talk about the meeting?
Yes.
Yes, we had the first public meeting for the downtown revitalization plan, and it was very successful. We had a great turnout, a lot of positive input. I was pleased that we had a wide variety of people there. Weren't you, to see the variety of people that we had? People from downtown, we had students, we had lots of people and lots of good input, and I think we're off to a great start. In connection with that, I wanted to ask David, has the RFP gone out for the comprehensive plan yet?
Your picture was in the Bangor Daily News, I think.
I heard that, I didn't see it. But
Dave Russell, code officer. It hasn't, but it'll be out before middle of next month.
Yeah, because that's really important for us getting grants.
They'll
for-
tie
yeah.
in nicely together.
Mhm.
Yes.
Because, yeah, great, okay.
So who's working on that? David and Ron? Is that
The
what?
comprehensive
Committee.
plan, it's a
Comprehensive
committee.
plan.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
But overall, the meeting was very successful, very good.
Is there another one scheduled?
Yes, but it's no specific date, and I'm pretty sure it's in January sometime, right?
Correct. And
Yeah.
people can still submit feedback through the survey, which is online. You can find that through our website. There's
And
still a
it's-
period of time where they can.
Yeah, and they're
submit their
downstairs in the lobby, and they're at the library, so.
Okay, very nice. Any questions on that? Thank you.
Yes.
City Attorney.
Just the item we're going to discuss in a few minutes.
Yes. Let me move right along. Special Committees, School Board Liaison, City Manager.
I'm good.
Welcome back, by the way.
Thank you.
You had a good time, I understood?
I had a great time.
Very nice. You'll send us pictures at some point.
Just stay away from us.
Stay away from us.
Give me a mask.
Email.
That's a good one. Consent agenda, public hearings, old business. Moving on to new business. City Council will consider approval of an application from Amira, Maine, for a pole location permit on Bennick Road. Councilor Peterson.
Resolved, the Old Town City Council hereby approves an application for Mara, Maine for a pole location permit for one pole located on the Bennick Road, approximately 1,850 feet, 2 feet northerly of the junction of the Kirkland Road.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Carol, discussion. We good with this?
I'm sorry.
Oh, David, I'm sorry. I know I read something about it somewhere.
Yes, Adam Jenkins, used to be the property that was 11 Doberman Lane, that the
Yes.
city transferred, it's been demolished, he's got a new street opening. The utility poles are on the opposite side of the road, so they gotta get one on that side of the road before then they can go to his poles.
So basically, they just got to get the okay from us to keep moving forward.
Yeah, we're just basically granting them an easement, utility easement to set the pole.
And you're fine with it?
Yes.
Any questions for Dave? No? Okay. All those in favor? None opposed. Two more items. Next item, City Council consider going into executive session for the purpose of discussing the city manager's annual performance evaluation. Councilor May.
Should we reverse 2 and 3?
No, it's just going to be, I told Miles, it's just going to be 2 or 3 minutes. It's not going to be that long. Councilor May.
Resolve the Old Town City Council hereby approves going into executive session pursuant to Title I MRSA, Section 4056A, for the purpose of discussing the city manager's annual performance evaluation.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
EJ, discussion. All those in favor? None opposed? Okay, we'll just be a couple minutes.
Shannon wants us to sign
Yes,
something.
please.
Yeah.
2 places.